sometimes I'm always tossing up between the idea of going for a longer, bigger publishing deal with more reach and more distribution and an agent and all that. But there's a fine line between, waiting for the perfect book moment to drop and actually just doing it yourself. Because before you lose momentum, and you need to get your story out there in the world. And my teenage self needed this book to be published.
Welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're here. You're going to be so glad you're here. I'm Kim Sorrelle. I'm a speaker and author. I get to do a lot of fun things in life, but my favorite thing to do is meet people, and I get to meet some extraordinary people. And today I have a guest that I have been so excited to talk to because it's topics that are a little different than anything that we've talked about before on the show. But it's something that all people do, or most all people, unless you're a monk, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, so we're gonna be talking about some stuff that is really important to talk about. And I'm so excited. So Tash, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Kim. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm so excited for you to be here. You're an expert at so many different things, and you've done so much, written books, and just whatever, lots and lots of things. So I want to know how you got to where you are today. So I would like to start by hearing about 8-year-old Tash.
Well, 8-year-old Tash was at an all-girls school in London, England, very grey and rainy weather all the time. And in my school, we had a lot of rules of all different kinds. I can't even really get into all of them, but you couldn't wear your hair a certain length without putting it up in a ponytail. You were trained to be a good little girl, and follow all the rules and do all the right things. So, I even had red shoes when I was in school, and they were always like perfectly polished, and I was always trying to color inside the lines. And I always felt like my classmates were kind of better than me in that sense. They were better at following all of the rules and being good girls. But yeah, always something even inside of me when I was that young, I think wanted to rebel or really question where a lot of those rules were coming from. And that I think informed a lot of my work as I've progressed throughout my adult life. So yeah.
That's so interesting. So it is tough. I went to Catholic school for a little while, and there's rules at a Catholic school. It wasn't all rules. It's a Catholic school, and holy cow, I got in trouble for the silliest things, but some kids got in trouble for things that really were trouble. And other things I always thought, man, just overlook that. Like, what does it matter? It's not harming anyone, but
Totally. Well, I love English culture in that sense because the rules are so absurd. You can only wear socks of a certain color. You have to keep your school uniform put together and everything. So I think, unfortunately, the fact that there were so many rules that had no basis to them just made rebelling that much more interesting and easier, because it really forced me to question everything. Because, the more rules that you have, the more that there is to rebel against. So yeah, I started questioning everything from a very, very young age. And luckily I was living in London though, so I was living in this really huge metropolitan global city. Maybe not at 8 years old, but at least at 13, 14 years old, I was always taking little solo trips around the city to different museums, all my favorite places, or day trips to Oxford. Even just today, a couple of days ago, I went on a retreat for 3 days into the forest on my own, basically. And I was like, why am I doing this on my own? And then I remembered, as in my teenage years, how I would often take the bus and just go to explore a new town within England on my own. And just because I like to do that and reflect and read and think about things, with my own mind. So that's how I was raised in London. So both rules and also the freedom to travel and explore the world was my upbringing.
Yeah. Adventure. I love that you love adventure. Like that is so cool. And so then you end up going to school. You finish high school. High school was good.
Yes. I went to 2 different high schools actually. And one of my high schools was had a lot of politicians and very famous people would come to give talks and stuff. And it was very intense. I was always in very rigorous academic environment. So I was always trying to get the best grades and everything. And yeah, I think that really formed a lot of my intellectual curiosity. I wasn't like a huge reader, but I think my high school curriculum was so intensive that we always like studied tons of incredible poets and writers and everyone anyway. And we that also took place in the heart of London as well. And that was also something that super inspires me. I love the places that I'm in. That's a huge aspect of my creative work. And my second high school was right in the center of London and next to Westminster Abbey, which is, you know, an abbey that's over almost 1,000 years old. I think in 2026, no, 2066, they'll have like the 1,000-year anniversary of this church. You know, just like stuff like that. So I'm in a super old, historic kind of medieval place. And I got to spend a lot of my last 2 years in London, just exploring all of those nooks and crannies of the history. And that I think really informed like a very rich inner world in terms of my fiction writing and all of the places that I love to visit. So I'm very, very grateful to have lived in London. I think it's a really awesome and beautiful place, very inspiring. And not to mention all of the great, you know, writers of English literature that have been there throughout the centuries, that I could get inspired by, but also intimidated by as I as I started to write my own work.
Yeah, oh my gosh, there have been so many incredible writers that have come out of London. It's like a mecca of all
Totally.
great writers. I love, I can't think of a writer from London that I haven't loved. Like
Right.
yeah, and lots of diversity in writing. It's just, yeah, fun to read. So
Totally.
then you went to school. What was your dream like as a kid? Are you living your dream, or did you know what you wanted to do after
Yeah,
school?
well, actually, I started writing my novel, which I published a couple of years ago, and I started writing it when I was 14 years old. So when I was in high school, my earlier high school, my English teacher had told me about a girl who was a couple of years older than me, and actually her parents worked in the publishing industry, so she had a lot of connections. But she told me that this girl had written a book and gotten it published in a single summer, and I thought, God, writing a book, you know, that can't be that hard. So I set out to write a novel when I was like 14. And then I spent the next 7 summers, you know, refining it, improving it, and I got really hooked on novel writing. And I am very grateful always to my family and friends because they sat through entire summer holidays of me not really engaging with anyone else and just sitting there on my laptop writing. And obviously, when you're writing at 14 years old, the quality of what you're writing is crap. But you need to like learn, right, how to write and how to type. I was still learning how to type when this all happened as well. And obviously my spelling is a lot better now, but you're still also learning how to spell and stuff like that. So I think even just getting started with writing at a really young age was something that I knew that I really loved to do. Even if a lot of my journal entries were just all about my anxiety to do with school and, you know, how I was gonna survive, you know, the rest of my high school teenage years. But even those journal entries, some of them that I managed to save in this box, which I then lost, which is kind of annoying, but it had all of my journal entries in it. And I actually used those to inform a lot of my female characters' experiences in my first novel. So I really needed to go back to what it was like to be a 15-year-old girl living in London. And the best way to do that was to read all my journal entries and then use that for my characters, you know, deepest insecurities and her flaws and how self-conscious she is and everything like that. So it all, you know, the richness I think was built by London and the external world. And then the writing from a pretty young age, I starting to build that internal world and connect that with everything around me. So yeah, and then that took me a long time to get that novel done, but I finally published it a couple of years ago now. Yeah.
Oh, which is amazing.
Mhm.
Writing a book is not an easy thing to do. You know,
Totally.
I hear people often, I don't know if you do, but I hear people often go, I want to write a book. And I always
Right.
say, well, give it a shot, you know, try.
Yeah.
But so often people have an idea or they think that people want to hear their family history or
Mhm.
whatever it happens to be, and
Mhm.
sit down and write a couple pages, and then those pages just sit there because
Right.
it's intense writing a book.
Yeah, I have to say, like, I started over the last, I guess, 4 years, I've had a bunch of different writing groups. I'm super grateful for my writing communities I'm a part of, including the London Writers Salon. That's a really, really great place to get started. I also have a writing teacher called Anne Randolph, and she does a series called Unmute. So I'm in that writing class right now with a bunch of my friends, and it's really fun. But I really did kind of look at this the other day and think, like, for example, maybe I haven't sold like 1 million copies of my first book yet, but like I did actually finish the novel and publish it. And that I think was the most important thing, because all my book writing groups along the way, I was not like expecting this, but I think I might be the only person in many of those groups that actually have published my book so far. And again, sometimes I'm always tossing up between the idea of going for a longer, bigger publishing deal with more reach and more distribution and an agent and all that. But there's a fine line between, waiting for the perfect book moment to drop and actually just doing it yourself. Because before you lose momentum, and you need to get your story out there in the world. And my teenage self needed this book to be published. Like, it had just been so many years of me working on it. I had also been an aspiring author for more than half of my life. Once I was 14 and I started writing the book, it then took me until I was 28 to actually finish the book. So I was an aspiring author for half of my life. And the difficult part about that also then was that once I did publish the book, that was the kind of the death of myself that I had been developing for that long, because I had, again, thought about doing this thing, thought about becoming an author, but then actually to be an author is a whole different person. So yeah, it's a very, again, it's like the trials and the tribulations, the inner work that you need to do in order to like actually finish and publish a book. It will teach you something, a couple of things about yourself. And I am really grateful that I stuck with it. And, now I've got my like second book that I'm working on and off, as well as a blog that I write regularly with a readership, over 500 readers generally on a weekly basis, which is amazing. And I'm super grateful to be able to write about topics that I'm very passionate about every single day. So life couldn't be better.
We have all these different stages now and different places to write than we had years ago, right? Like, you kind of grew up with it more. I didn't, there wasn't blogging when I was growing up or anything like that. And so it's cool that you can write. If you want to write, you can write. There's places to write. And so it's fun. I think people fear sometimes the fact that there aren't as many magazines out there or as many newspapers or whatever, but there are so many more places than when we just had magazines and newspapers.
Exactly. And I use a platform called Substack to publish my weekly work. And it's not perfect, no, none of these newslettery platforms are, but I really have found a lot of joy and also just amazing connections. I recently connected with another writer who writes a Substack called Happy Endings, and she writes all about her sex life as a married woman, whereas I write about my sex life as a, single person roaming around the world. And it's just been amazing to connect with people who have like similar goals, similar values, and also are just like writing incredible and super inspiring work. So I'm really grateful to Substack for that. And I think you don't have to start with a huge audience or anything like that. Even one of my friends is just writing her poetry and publishing it regularly. But that is even better, I think, than sitting on the dream of, doing something, but never actually like putting pen to paper or never actually typing your first words. You actually need very little to start, right? Like, you just need to start writing a word. It could be 5 minutes of writing, but even just 5 minutes of action and writing, I would say, is better than harboring a dream for 40 years about this rom-com, whatever special that you wish that you had written, because if only you had been like Helen Field writing Bridget Jones or something, 50 years ago. So I'm a big believer in action and like taking action. And I think, that's something that I just want to continue to do as I'm like writing so much, and creating content that I think is beautiful and empowering and wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to just take action. Just do it. Whatever that thing is that you keep saying, oh gosh, someday I just want to. Well, who knows if someday is going to be ever.
Yeah, right.
When is someday? I mean, it's so vague. So just do it. Just do it.
Exactly. And you have to make it a smaller task, right? Like obviously my task was to like write a great book. Okay. But that starts with how do you break that down into something that you could do in 2 minutes, which would be like sitting down at my desk with a cup of coffee and typing a sentence. Like you got to really break these giant milestones down into something that you can bite off. Even I tried to do that with my social media and stuff too. Like I publish regularly on social media and I'm like, oh, I want to post like 3 times a day on TikTok or whatever. But no, I'm like, I just have to sit down, edit one video, will like take as long as it's going to take, optimize the keywords, like send that, it's like one tiny step at a time. So that's how you really try to reduce as much fear as you can in your mind. But Stephen Pressfield often talks about this in The War of Art. And he talks about the fact that as you create a dream, like imagine that there's a tree and the shadow of the tree is just as large as the tree itself. And that is your resistance, your internal resistance to your creative projects or whatever it is. So that's why it's important to just acknowledge that the resistance is there, right? Like you've created this dream or you want to do something. And there is going to be some fear that's going to happen inside of you. And then, just break it down into small chunks as possible so you can actually start and get moving. And then the momentum of moving and taking action will hopefully continue to guide you as you grow. So, yeah.
Yeah. That's such great advice. And Stephen Pressfield, again, great book. And I would say this too, that lately, I've had a few people that I've talked to that have talked about creativity and imagination. Yeah. And some people lose that. Like, as a kid, you look at a kid and they're turning blankets into a fort or, whatever.
Yeah, totally.
Right? Yeah. And they're playing parts and they've got this whole world going that you don't see, but they see perfectly.
Totally.
And, but then as time goes by, why do you think we lose that creativity and how do we get it back again?
Yeah, I don't know, but I will just start with a story, which was that literally when I was on my forest retreat, I went out to a restaurant one day for lunch and they had a petting zoo at the restaurant, but they were only charging kids to play with like the little ducks and the kittens and stuff. I live in Mexico, so they have like farms and things with people who are like letting their animals, kids play with animals and stuff. And like, I was surprised that they weren't charging adults at all. Like, I was like, I want to play with the kittens. Like, and then I gave them money, obviously, because I was like, I'm going to take the place of the kids and like play with the petting zoo. But I don't know why. I think, at least for me, it comes from not being too serious about the world. And also just continuously reconnecting with, I think just visual art for me has always been something that I really enjoyed looking at. And places, exploring new places, and whether it's going for a walk in the park or whatever it is, it can be small. It doesn't have to be like something so massive as, I don't know, becoming a painter. But I would say also I just finished a really great session with some female friends. We did The Artist's Way again together, and that book is always a really, really good one to always go back to. The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. Just if you kind of are struggling to get your creativity back, I really recommend it because it'll say funny things, like you'll have to reflect on your childhood self and then like reenact some of those things that used to inspire you when you were a kid. And also, I think writing in community is really important as well. Like I was kind of feeling a bit stuck with my creativity. And then I just decided, last minute to restart my writing group and my writing classes with my friends with Anne Randolph. And she's a woman who I think really has inspired me a lot. I actually left her a Mother's Day message. She doesn't have children, but I thanked her for being the mother of my reborn creativity, because sometimes you just meet these people who catalyze that, in your life. It could be your gardener. It could be, you're somebody in your church who you find really inspiring and interesting, or who like sews beautiful clothing or whatever it is, so I would try to find people in your life who you think are enabling that or are channeling something that you want, and spend time with them and look at how they see the world. And so I think that The Artist's Way, and then just reconnecting with your inner child as much as possible is the tips that I have for creativity.
Yeah, those are great tips. I love those tips. And I mean, let your hair down. Like life doesn't have to be so serious all the time. It doesn't have a serious period, right? Like just enjoy day by day. Like don't worry about the future. Don't worry about the past, but enjoy today and be yourself. Don't feel like you got to be somebody else, and let your inner child have a good time. Go to the
Totally.
park and go on the monkey bars or, whatever it is, man. I used to love to do that on the playground at school. So
Yeah.
go swing,
Yeah,
whatever,
exactly.
right?
Or even going to, like, I don't know, I don't like theme parks and roller coasters, but if you do, and if you love Disney, like, I mean, people make fun of like adult Disney like fans, but if that's what you really like to do, then fuck it, go on the cruise or have a nice time in Disneyland and enjoy it, because that's the magic of all these beautiful creative things that people have made. So
Yeah. Well, I can tell you from an adult Disney person that I
yes,
don't care if anybody makes fun of me because
yes,
I have a blast. I have so much
exactly.
fun. And it's, I think that people who don't understand adult Disney people are people who haven't gone to Disney. So
Right.
they don't get it because there's so much there
Exactly.
for adults and whatever. Anyway, yes, I love
Yeah,
Disney.
but it's one of those things where maybe people are like judgmental towards Disney adults, but then they just really don't understand the magic of it. Similar vibe. I mean, people, Harry Potter World as well in England is a really beautiful place. They have one in, God, I can't remember what it's called, but anyway, they have like the actual setting and the set and all of the props that they use, and it is incredible the amount of detail and beautiful creations that people made to make those movies come to life. Especially given that in the early 2000s they had a bunch of like technical difficulties they had to overcome, because obviously like computer animations and stuff like weren't that advanced. But it was so cool to be able to go back there and kind of like re-experience the magic of Harry Potter again. And then those places do really inspire you. It's like they're so beautiful. So yeah, I recommend, whether it's like a castle near your house that you want to like check out, or a weird funky like architecture museum or whatever, just take some time out of your day to do something like that once in a while. I think it's really, really helpful to connect with your creativity.
Yeah, I think that's so true. I think it's so true. So your creativity is leading you to other things,
Yes.
and another book and whatever. So what are you most passionate about right now?
Yeah, right now I'm super passionate. I just started a new project called the Sex Report. And the goal with this project is that I am going to read primary literature. So these are scientific studies. They get 20 people in a room together and they interview them about blah, 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 or whatever. And then relate them to my own life. Because I think with a lot of, research or women's health findings or all these different kinds of things, there's always that disconnect between like what the scientists are finding and then what people's actual experiences are. And then also I write a lot about like very sensitive, erotic topics. And so not everyone is willing to come forth and say, oh, this is how I, have an orgasm, or this is what me and my partner like to do. This is how frequently we're having sex, those kinds of things. So I'm kind of using myself as a human guinea pig in that sense. And it's really stimulating my intellectual curiosity as well as I'm developing my expertise in this area of sex research. So rather than getting a PhD, I'm specifically just going to be working through reading and summarizing and then relating to 100 different articles about sex-related topics. So I've started with 2 so far. One of them is about, the first one is about body image and social comparison on social media. So specifically around the over-sexualization of women. And specifically, I talk about with that one how I recently saw one of my friends get featured in the New Yorker for her new book, and I was immediately incredibly jealous. So it's about how social media and comparing ourselves to others is bad for our mental health, especially for women, both in terms of your body image, your sexuality, and your intellectual life. Excuse me. And then the second one that I just wrote about last week was a study that I read, which showed that if you go on a date and you eat lots of different types of exotic foods, your partner is more likely to consider you sexually open. So it's basically about the tip that if you go to a restaurant, you don't want to be seen as a picky eater, because rather than, new experiences or books or TV or whatever, specifically when you're evaluating another partner, their willingness to try different types of foods and different flavors and be curious and experimental. A lot of people are signaling and thinking that has something to do with their sexual openness. So, it's kind of, then I show a funny story about a guy that I was on a date with last week, and actually here in Mexico, they eat a lot of different types of insects as well. So he was asking me if I wanted to try some different dishes. And the whole funny point of the article is that I had just read this research. And so obviously I was like, oh, of course I want to try the, like chrysalis of whatever butterfly. So yeah, I tried all of the insects, and they weren't that great. I didn't enjoy them, but I used that as the framework for the story, which was very funny. So
yeah, that is pretty funny. So it's like, if you're going to say it, you got to walk it. You got to walk the talk, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And my whole blog's mission is to help the world be shamelessly sexy. So I really try to focus on different aspects of shame and how it affects our ability to live our lives freely as women, whether that's from, academic background or, financial, social, what are your friends doing, these kinds of things. I feel like when you're a woman, every single stage of your life, you have like 7 different opinions from other people, whether you're, trying to get a new job, or you're having a baby, or you're dating somebody, or you're having sex with somebody. Everyone has like their weighing in, ideas of what you should be doing with your life. And I just want to create a space where people can explore freely in terms of their different aspects of their sexuality, and also just read from somebody, i.e. myself, who is being completely honest with the internet about every single aspect of my private life, so that they can actually say like, hey, this is what the study is saying in the science, but like, this is somebody's real experience. And how does that compare?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that. The shame is such a big thing.
Totally.
So let's get rid of it, right? Like,
right.
It's amazing how much shame we carry. It's like luggage on our back, a huge backpack of this shame that goes around with us everywhere. And it ends up affecting relationships. It ends up affecting how happy you are in life and whatever. And you talk about different kinds of shame, or where shame can come from. So dive into that a little.
Yeah. So the goal with being shamelessly sexy specifically has 3 different areas. The first is to actually figure out what you want. And so I give people a bunch of different techniques and tools, but there's sex journaling, like watching erotic content, exploring and like detailing yourself what it is that you actually want in your own sex life. And I think, I specifically focus on this area because it's very like underserved, but I think the learnings from your sex life can be applied to all other aspects of your life as well. So that's number 1. You have to figure out what it is that you actually want, right? The second part is that you have to actually believe that you deserve what you want, which means actually building your self-esteem as a female specifically, and believing that like, I have these wants, therefore I should actually act out on them. We're not going to live our whole lives pretending or wishing that we could be somewhere else. We're actually going to make and take action on them. So that's a very important aspect of it, because I think sometimes, especially in the bedroom, it's like we don't really feel like we're entitled to our pleasure. And you want to always make sure that the guy is having a great time and like having an orgasm, but then like maybe you're not actually going to get your needs met. So we have to believe that we deserve equal pleasure in that sense. It's very important. And then the third aspect is asking for what you want, and that actually takes figuring out what you want, believing that you deserve what you want, and then you actually go ahead and you communicate that with your partner. And I think also in this area, it's quite vulnerable, because you have to really face the fact that you could be rejected, right, by your partner, and that if they are not willing to fulfill your needs, then they may not be the right partner for you. And I think that's very important as well. So basically, I'm trying to change the whole lens that a lot of us were raised with, to say that, you are like entitled to your own wants and needs. And hopefully by then writing very openly about my own experiences, you can see how like these fantasies that we have are often very closely related to the ways that we were raised, and actually are like often just reflections of that, or even a kind of a perversion of that. So I'll give you an example, which is that, like, as I was mentioning before, I went to this private all-girls school, and we were always trying to be seen as good girls, right? But actually what I kind of want to do with my partners in bed is have them like treat me badly or have me behave, in a naughty way or whatever, and then them praise me for being a good girl. So it's the same phrase, but it's kind of this perverted, like reflection of that. And that's how it manifests, at least for me, in the bedroom. So I think that's very interesting, right? It's like, it's something that's totally related to my upbringing. But I added, a bit of spice or like eroticism in there as well. So just communicating these small things that I'm discovering about my own sexuality, I hope to give my readers more permission to explore that as well in their own lives. And that's why I encourage people to also keep a sex journal. So I use my blog as my sex journal. That's where I write openly about my experiences. But not everyone is going to be obviously willing to do that and publishing the details of their life online. So that's why I encourage people to get your own journal and start to, write about it in your own time, in your own way. How your experiences have been throughout your life, like what actually turned you on. Was there times that you went out for dinner and like yes, the dinner was nice, but you were thinking about this guy's hands or his clothes or his, the way that he looked or whatever, or smells, or and also exploring sexuality and being attracted to like other kinds of people. So that's why I think it's such an interesting, complex topic of human sexuality that I think is endlessly fascinating. And the fact that it's taboo as well, I think just gives me a bit more energy and momentum, because I like to kind of break the rules, as I was saying earlier. So that's why I enjoy working on this topic and helping people to discover these aspects of themselves that might just be hidden from our day-to-day lives.
Yeah, that's so interesting because sex is something that is sort of this forbidden, this taboo subject, like people don't talk about it. And
right.
You might talk about raising your kids, you might talk about your jobs, you might talk about other things. And it can be, very private and intimate between two people. And so maybe you don't want to talk about it, but I think it's good to talk about with your girlfriends because so often people wonder, like I have a really good friend who's in a marriage that she wants it, but it's not happening. And I'm like, talk to them, communicate that, talk to them or show up at the door in a negligee, or do something, put a picnic, make a picnic in the living room, do something that maybe sets the scene, that maybe make him, first of all, realize that you want it. And I think that is something too. I don't know your experience on this, but in the US, I guess maybe in the Midwest, I know better than anything because that's where I was born and raised. But it was always the men needed to be the initiators, right? Right. The men needed to be the givers of the romance. The men needed to be, the guy in the boat on Notebook, right? And that's what you thought men should be. And so women sometimes have a hard time.
Totally.
Hey, baby, let's get it on.
And actually, one of my friends, she's older as well. I think she's 60 something. And she recently left a new boyfriend that she had because she had wanted to have like more intimate time with him, like once a week was her idea. And he was just not having it. He also had some dogs that he like couldn't seem to just like leave his dogs in his house in order to like spend more quality intimate time with her. And she was just like, stuff this, and she was specifically really inspires me because she dates a lot of younger men as well. So even in her 60s, she's feeling like as hot as ever and is like able to explore what she actually needs with men who are like half her age. And I'm not saying that everyone needs to do that, but I think the point is that like, you need to take action about like what your actual needs are. And if the person, again, if your partner is not willing to fulfill that, then that's some very helpful information, and I mean, there's a lot of questions these days about like open relationships and those kinds of things as well. But that's also a point to take into account, because if you're, bisexual and you want to explore something that's like outside of your long-term relationship, those are all points of communication that I think are very important to bring up with your partners and things. So, but then again, I've never been married and I've never been in a long-term relationship lasting 15 plus years. So maybe I'm not the best to give advice on that specific area, but I think also you would be surprised, and maybe that's something that I can explore in at least some of my research, is like maybe examples of when females initiated sex and how men feel about that. Because I'm pretty sure that like a lot of guys would be pretty excited about it. I think, whether it's like sending spicy texts or just exploring that. I think there's a lot of like dynamic there. And as I was saying, my friend Abigail, who writes the Substack Happy Endings, she talks a lot about how, as a mother, people see mothers as too pure. And actually there's this mother like whore complex, which is very exciting that she explores with her husband a lot. So actually, as they've had children and continue to be in a relationship, it's gotten spicier in some ways that she hadn't expected before. So I think, it's really just about challenging those notions that, because you're a mother, you have to be this like pure angelic figure. Just finding other interesting ways. And actually they specifically focus, her and her partner focus on prioritizing it as well, right? We all have busy lives. We all have tons of things that we're doing. But if both of you make it a priority in your relationship, that I think is one of the most important things as well, because it does matter just as much as your, emotional happiness or your financial happiness, I would say.
Yeah, well, it's such a connector. Being intimate with your partner is puts your relationship on an entirely different level. And if you get away from that, which is so easy to do, you got the kids, you're running around, you're exhausted, you got everything going, you're working, you're doing whatever you're doing. It can be easy to go, well, that's down at the bottom of the list because we just need to take a shower, right? Whatever it is. And I love the idea of prioritizing, set it, make sure that you do put it on the calendar, which might not seem so spontaneous, romantic, but you got to keep it going. For myself with my husband, it was entirely different when we went through dry spells, how we felt about him, how connected we weren't.
Totally.
As opposed to when we weren't in a dry spell and how connected we were.
Exactly.
And, there's whatever. God invented it for a reason other than just making babies.
Yeah, exactly. And I think also I have some of my other friends, my mother's friend is in a marriage and she's kind of just accepted, I think her partner also smokes a lot of weed or something. And she's kind of just accepted that, in her mid-60s that this is going to be it, and she's going to have to wait until he dies basically. And I'm like, girl, you still have 20 years left. This is your prime time. I think dating in your 70s could be so fun. I don't know. But then again, I'm not going to be the one to just go over to her and be have an intervention and be I think you should leave your husband, But ultimately, if this person is not going to change, then you have to, communicate that. And also just, again, believe that you deserve what you want. If you're unhappy, just don't spend the next 20 of your years of your life being unhappy. Life is short. There's plenty of options out there. And, it is the prospect of dating, I think in the modern age, especially if you've been married for 30 years, is probably terrifying because dating apps exist. People are doing all kinds of things, but ultimately I think it's about exploring, being curious and having fun.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's funny because I really believe that one person can change a relationship. I did this thing where I did this Eat, Pray, Love year, focusing on love, focusing on figuring out the true meaning of love. And what I found out just blew my mind, rocked my world. It's just amazing. And so often we think that two people, if he doesn't change, what do I do? What do I do? Or, well, make your needs known. I think that's where it starts is I love what you're saying about realize that you get to live the life that you believe you should be living, be the person you believe you're created to be, and be fully and completely that, and don't let anybody take that away from you. And so it doesn't matter if you've been married for 5 years, 5 months, 50 years, it doesn't matter. Because relationships change over the years. I got married when I was 18 years old. I mean, I hope my relationship changed. I hope I got a little more mature as time went on, right? And so, dating is really horrible at this age. I got to say, my husband passed away several years ago. And
I'm sorry. Yeah,
that's okay. But that's a whole nother thing. But I learned that you do have to talk. I had a great marriage. And I think a lot of it is because I determined I wanted a great marriage.
Exactly.
And he didn't. I didn't even talk to him about it. But I knew that that's what I wanted. And so that's what I created. And he did not have a romantic bone in his body, but I needed romance. So I went against the flow of only the man can create romance and said,
Right.
no, if I need it, I'm going to create it. So I planned little weekend getaways, or I planned a picnic in the living room, or a candlelit dinner, or, whatever it happened to be, because I needed it. I needed it.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with being the creator.
Totally.
It's sort of like, Tash, have you ever had, somebody, they'll come down, wearing something, how do I look? And then, they're mad because they had to ask instead of their husband just saying, oh, baby, you are so hot tonight.
Yeah.
They don't know they're supposed to say that, right? They're reading your mind. They don't know they're supposed to say that. So ask. It's okay.
Yeah.
How do I look? Then he'll go, baby, you look well, whatever it is.
Yeah. No, totally. I think that's really important. And also there's I'm not sure about the science of the love languages, but I think that is important as well, because if you want words of affirmation, that's your love language, then your partner should definitely know that. That's probably the most important thing. You need to know what love language you like to receive and also what you like to give. And I think because that's really the core of the communication there as well. And yeah, I think expecting other people to read our minds is very interesting. An interesting thing that's not going to help us to actually get where we need to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And then what would you say to somebody, though, that their whole life, here they are, and never talked about it with anybody because they've been told their whole life, don't ever talk about it, right? And they haven't even talked about it with their spouse. But they're realizing that they can, because they're listening to this and they're being told, yes, you can talk about it with your spouse and open up that way. How would you begin a conversation like that? Or what kind of steps would be the first ones?
Yeah, well, that's why I wanted to focus first on exploring and discovering what you want. And that can also be a process that takes many different forms. But I think starting with a sex journal is a really interesting and beautiful personal way that people can do it, within the privacy of their own homes. Again, you do not need to publish this anywhere like I would do with my blog, Myth Educated. But I think, for example, start with, let's say you're, 45 years old, start with your first time, right? Write a specific scene and recall as many details as you can about what that experience was like. What were you attracted to this person at the time? Maybe, okay, you're no longer attracted to 16-year-old boys. That's fine. But was it the setting, or was it a special moment that you had worked up to? And try to draw yourself into your body. So this is, the senses sight, touch, hearing, smelling, feeling, tasting, get sensory about it, because it'll help you to figure out what was it in those situations that you actually liked. And again, it doesn't even need to be about something erotic itself. It could be, again, a dinner date that you went on and you were really feeling it and you were really feeling attracted to this person. What was it about that experience that you were attracted to? Was it the prospect of having sex afterwards, the anticipation? And I think also in that sense, aside from just writing about, your specific experiences, writing about how you pleasure yourself and what toys you use as well, I think is very important. And I actually write a lot about different toys that I've used on my blog as well. So, you are able to purchase them through my website and everything if you want. But I've actually had a lot of people, especially my friends' mothers who are divorced and older, who are kind of going through this reawakening. Sometimes it involves buying a new toy for yourself and experiencing pleasure for yourself first before you can, transfer that to your experiences with your partner. So yeah, I think that exploration phase, again, is something that I don't want people to feel pressure about. I don't know what is it going to be for each of the people who are listening, what they can tap into, but you might be surprised. I don't know, I'm imagining, I have a friend from Wisconsin, so I'm imagining that maybe she went to the county fair, and then the guy with the he was really great at raising cows or whatever. You know what I mean? It could be really, really random things like that. Or maybe it's the belt buckle with the jeans and the cowboy boots is just something that really gets you going, It can literally be anything. So just start with those details. And as you get to know yourself more, then you can start to think about reenacting them or talking about that through with the partner. But knowing thyself, most important first step, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Knowing yourself and knowing that you can.
Totally. Yeah.
both of those things. So yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
That
And
makes
also what I would say is, especially in like a kind of a religious or, an institutional setting, I think forbidden things are also very hot, right? So that's also an area that I think people can feel a lot of shame about. Even, finding your friend's husband attractive. Like there are a lot of like other areas of sexuality. I think you need to realize and embrace that you are allowed to have these thoughts, right? You do not necessarily need to act on them. You do not need to like, start to pursue an affair with your friend's husband. Like that's not what I'm saying that you should do. But the point is that what happens a lot with sexuality as well is that the things that we are like feel shame about, or we've been trodden down or kind of like made to feel that this is a prohibited thing, can feel like liberating when it comes to sex. And so I would also just explore that and just understand that whatever thoughts you have are completely normal, right? Like there's no thought that you could have under the sun. There's people are into all kinds of weird stuff. So just, be when you discover or when you feel yourself having like these ideas of, sexuality that might feel uncomfortable or kind of scary, just, take a moment and practice self-compassion and just be kind to yourself and say like, hey, like this is a thought I had. Like, I'm not saying that this is going to be defining to my sexuality, but like I saw whoever's husband and I thought he was hot. Like that's also fine, right? Like then maybe you find which qualities you liked about that person, and then you try to seek that in your own marriage, or you develop that in yourself. So I would say just as much as possible, approach your thoughts, whatever they come up with love and acceptance, and just keep it as your own little secret because nobody else has to know.
right. Absolutely. You don't have to go blasting it in the neighborhood.
Exactly.
Yourself, that's okay.
Yeah.
But yeah. And within your marriage, my word, there are so many things you can do to go back to the butterflies, go back to those times. Like I love the idea of what were those moments, what was it like? For me, I'll never forget the moment my husband walked into the bowling alley. I was in a bowling alley of all places.
Right.
My husband walked in.
What was he wearing? Let's paint the scene a little bit here.
Oh yeah, Levi corduroy pants, and which I thought that was nice because everybody else is in jeans, but he had these corduroys on.
That's corduroys are hot.
That shirt, man, and he was so hot. He was just so good. And so and I love the idea of the senses, like the smells of the bowling alley, just all the things,
Do you remember anything that he like said to you, or did you meet there for the first time? Is that where you met?
Yeah, we met there for the first time, and I was interesting, I guess, maybe in high school. I didn't want to get married or have kids. I was sure I was going to be the first woman president, and I had my life laid out, whatever.
Yes, Kim.
But I knew that if I ever were to get married, a man had to have two things. He had to be over 6 foot tall, because my very short mom married a very short man. And so I wanted to give my kids some chance of height. Right. And he had to be really good looking, because I wanted good looking wedding pictures. So I was obviously a very deep thinker and going for all the qualities.
Very profound.
And so he walked in 6'3", gorgeous, so handsome. And the thing that really got me about him was he was quiet. Like and I thought he was stuck up, was a term that we'd use, or whatever. Like he was too good for anybody. Like he gave off this really cool vibe. I found out later he just isn't that extroverted, I guess. But at the time I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to break that shell, because holy cow, he's so hot. Yeah.
Wow. Right. Yeah. So that's what's interesting about that, I would say, is like, again, you're quite an outgoing person. So maybe you're better off being with somebody who's like kind of the opposite of that. And again, maybe taking some of those societal narratives or whatever about the man swooping in and being like, hey, honey, like if he's a quiet guy, like he's going to be timid. Maybe he's not going to approach you in the same way. And so I think that's also the important aspect of keeping a sex journal and exploring sexuality, is that like the combinations between humans beings are just like infinite in all the ways that they can be different, right? and they may not follow the script exactly of like what you think, the personality of a traditional masculine man should be, right? Because these things are constructed, right? Like, you don't need to have somebody who's super talkative in order for them to be a manly man. So I think it's important to embrace that as well, and just see the differences, because, even like one of my partners, he was a barista, and this man has given me like the most orgasms that I've ever had in my life. He was incredibly good at eating me out, right? So, but he actually himself had been like previously really overweight, so he had a lot of excess skin, and he never looked in his terms of his body in the way that like we would normally say like a dude with a six pack, like I would say like, oh, I need to have a dude with a six pack. Well, actually I didn't in this case, like there were so many other aspects of his personality that I loved so much. And the way that he ate me out, especially, I really enjoyed that. I think, when you're exploring your sexuality through journaling, or, just being out in the world or whatever it is, just start to be aware of how, the script of what we've been told might not actually fit what you're actually feeling about this person. And if they don't fit the script, then that's also totally okay. So yeah, I think that's very important to take the whole package of a person as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Right. I have so many friends that met somebody and at first weren't even attracted to them. And then they got to know them and now are married to them and, madly in love with them because, here they were. And so, yeah, don't discount people, I think, is part of the lesson there, right? Don't just say, yeah,
exactly. And that can be really difficult, I think, for modern women today, because a lot of us are living in more about what they say masculine, we're paying our rent, we have our jobs, we're out there in the world, we're like hosting our own podcasts, we're like, women are doing stuff these days, you know what I mean? We have a lot of freedom that like our mothers or even our grandmothers didn't have. So I think in that sense, sometimes I also fall into this trap of being overly logical. I'm like, I need to have this checklist of 15 different things, and if they don't meet these, blah, blah, blah. And realistically, what I'm also trying to focus on right now is, how do I feel around this person, or how does this person make me feel? And that's very, very important. Intelligence is really important to me, like being able to have an intellectual conversation, because let's be real, I'm a very interested person with many different curiosities about the world. So I'm not going to be with somebody who only likes to sit there and watch sports all day, unless they're very passionate about sports and interested in it, in which case we could talk about that. But yeah, I think that's important. And then just realizing that, the external things in the world might not actually match up very much to how you want to make this person, allow you to feel. So just explore that and have fun with it.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think, physical connection is just really an important thing too in a relationship.
Totally.
Hold hands or sit next to each other on the couch if you're watching a TV show or movie or something, and don't be in two different lounge chairs on opposite sides of the room, but be connected. I think the more you can connect, the better.
Yeah. And I would say, if I observed anything also about my parents, is that as we've gotten smartphones and TVs and all that kind of stuff, like sometimes my dad will just be like playing chess on his phone. And I'm like, wow, like you could be having so many more connections if we just put the damn phones down. I think that's a very important thing, because you probably won't even realize how little, even those small day-to-day interactions with your family, or your romantic partner, I think can be really important. And I think the phone is just like, it just cuts off all of that connection, and kind of traps us. And then you kind of wake up maybe 3 months later and you're like, why do I feel lonely? And like, I'm not, connecting with my partner enough. And it's because you've been both on your phones for the last months. So keep that in mind as well, I would say.
Yeah. And just because you can hold a phone in your hand doesn't mean you're holding hands with the phone.
Right.
So yeah, you kind of need a person for that. So yes. Yeah.
Yes. As great as AI is for our emotional whatever, having human beings around is still the bee's knees, I would say. So yeah.
Yeah. I agree with that. Connection is so important in every way. Yeah, they just did a study recently in the US that said that in the US, over 50% of people suffer from extreme loneliness.
Right.
So those are people that have friends, right? I mean, it's not like 50% of people aren't married or don't have friends or, don't have somebody in their life, but they still are lonely. So it's to figure out ways to not be lonely while you're in a relationship is a good idea. And putting down the phone, probably step number one.
Right. Exactly. And we're all, guilty of this as well, Yeah, but it's something to try to do, I would say, at least for a specific period of time every day.
Yeah, for sure. Or be watching things together on the phone.
Yeah.
Good idea either, right? If you're doing YouTube videos or I don't know, whatever it is you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. But then you have to have a shared interest with your partner, because I've also had partners who would watch like Formula One videos, and I was just like, I don't. Our YouTube algorithms are different, and this is not optimized for my viewing experience. So, yeah.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, that's a good thought for sure. So as you're getting your own PhD in the world, yes. What things have surprised you about things that you've read and studies?
Yeah, well, right now I'm really I love this woman, Dr. Emily Oster. I was recently reading her book, Expecting Better, which she wrote like 10 years ago. And it just honestly blows my mind continuously how poorly researched or under-researched a lot of these things are, especially to do with women, female health, and sexuality. Like Emily Oster is an economics professor, so she's not even like necessarily doing this research herself. But when she was pregnant with her first child, she was like, wait, can I actually have coffee? Can I drink during my pregnancy? All of these like guideline things, because the pediatricians and her friends, OBGYNs, everyone was giving her different messages. So I really love the way that she's, done all the research herself and like read all of the studies and then compiled it into a book that's actually practical. And it just blows my mind that these are like issues that affect millions of people, including in the case of what she's working on, the health outcomes of children, which is important and literally has a massive, massive impact. And I think it's just really, really cool. I love seeing, my female friends or other people that I know taking a health issue that they've struggled with and creating something new to solve this specific problem. My other friend, Christy, she's the founder of KEG, which is a small device that you insert up into your vagina, and it measures your cervical mucus. So it gives you a super accurate reading of your fertility window. So over the exact days that you're pregnant. And she specifically helps women with, irregular cycles and stuff as well. And that's amazing. So she's had like 50,000 people be able to conceive through using her device. And I don't know, just people like that where I'm like, oh my God, like the world is really what you make of it. And whether it's, a scientist like Dr. Emily Oster, who's helping us to like better understand the world, or my friend Christy, who are like building products that are like shaping the world. I think it's never been a better time to be a woman. And it's just really, really cool to see how these women are like taking the world as their own, and making it the place that they want to live in. So I get super inspired by those stories constantly. And those are the types of people that I like to, have on my podcast and stuff too, when I get the option.
Yeah. Well, I agree. Women, we need to stick together more, I think, too, right? We need to support each other and be there for each other and not be critical of each other. And that doesn't get you anywhere. Just, if you don't like somebody, just don't hang out with them. You still love them from afar, love them from
totally.
But support each other and realize the power we have.
Totally.
We're powerful beings. Women are.
And one thing that I really noticed, because I'm quite an outspoken woman about a bunch of different topics and I have a lot of opinions, is that when I meet another woman who's also opinionated, I had a lot of internalized misogyny. So I would look at a girl who's opinionated and be like, oh God, I don't like her. My immediate thought was often to judge people and express my, internal judgment towards them. But I actually realized that usually if I actually dislike a woman as soon as I meet her, that's actually because I have a lot in common with her. Because that's exactly my personality type. And I actually want to be around women who are go-getters, ambitious, who are challenging themselves and, willing to speak their minds. So that's something that I've definitely learned over the years. And sometimes that can happen, you find yourself judging somebody because they express an opinion or, they're outspoken or something. But actually those ultimately are the types of women that I want to be friends with. So that's something that I've had to unlearn in my own experience as well.
Yeah. It is interesting because we make these quick judgments quite often, or I say we, like, I know everybody in the world does this, but obviously not everybody, but people often make these quick judgments and then miss out on incredible opportunities with people and incredible relationships.
Totally. And I also think, like, if you're in the exact same field as somebody, it can be difficult to want to compete with them, you know. But I, for example, like, I went to business school and I have a ton of friends that work in venture capital, and I have like tried to work in venture capital like twice, and both times I was so bored, I was like, I'm never going to do this. So I don't mind sharing all of my venture capital contacts with my friends because I want to see my friends succeed, you know. So if you find yourself getting competitive or jealous, that's because they're succeeding in the one area that you also want to succeed in, which is really, really great data, you know, for yourself and for your own career. But if you don't personally want to succeed in that specific domain, then just like give them as much as you can, you know, be as supportive as possible, because, you know, rising tide lifts all boats situation. And I think we can continue to like support each other in those ways as well. And then get to the place where we all want to be together, as Cindy Gallup says.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I can't believe it, but our time is up, and this has gone by so fast, and it's been so great. I appreciate everything you had to say. And ladies, just, you know, be your powerful you, be the person you're created to be, and don't be afraid to communicate things and do the things that Tash suggests, because they're great advice. It's all such great advice. So how can people follow you, get in touch with you?
Yes. Well, first things first, if you like spicy coming of age teen romance novels, you can buy my book, These Perfectly Careless Things, on Amazon. It's available all over the US. So yeah, you should be able to find it there. And then you can also find me, I'm mostly on Miseducated. So MISS educated _ and yeah, you can follow me on TikTok, Instagram, and also I'm writing a weekly Substack for the Sex Report. So if you're interested in seeing what other scientific research I'm going to be reading and talking about in my personal life, you can go there and check out my own sex journal that's public on the internet.
That's awesome. And of course, we'll have all that in the show notes and whatever. And thank you so much for being here. I so appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate how many women you're helping. And I just know you're just going to change the world. And
thank you, Kim. That's so sweet. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for being here. I'm so glad that you were. And until we see each other again, I just pray that you keep your heart open and live your love loud.